Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kyoto Tamura. I'm the head of marketing at Treasure Data. A quick show of hands, how many people have heard of Treasure Data? All right, good number. I recognize some names. So today, I'm pleased to introduce one of our joint customers with Tableau, MobilityWare. And with MobilityWare, we've been working some time to really get their next data analytics and monetization to the next level. And I pass the microphone to them like in a few minutes, but I wanted to give a quick intro to who we are. So Treasure Data is the first live data management platform. So what is that? We really believe that the way to turn your data into a strategic asset is to make all the data sources connected, because your knowledge is described in all these different data silos. And bringing them together, making it connected, and making it current and easily accessible to all the stakeholders is how you really win with your data. So without a further ado, let me introduce Ed Shaw with MobilityWare, who's going to talk about how they're using data to take their business to the next level.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Sorry, I'm ripping off that guy. Yes, for those of you who are younger, this is hard copy. So. Okay, I think we skipped that one already. Hi, so my name's Ed Shaw. I'm the data integration manager at MobilityWare. So MobilityWare is a software gaming company that builds mobile games. We're basically have solitaire games, card games, so we are expanding out a little bit. So from that, a little bit about myself. I've been doing this for 15 years from a database administration side, integration, and data collection. So I enjoy long walks on the beach and reading a good book by the fire. So that's probably about as jokey as I'm going to get. So, MobilityWare kind of by the numbers. So we are first in the iOS App Store in 2008. So you guys can guess it's always good to be first at anything. So top 10 in cards category, 6 consecutive years, Android 4 consecutive years. Approximately 1 in 10 of all iPhone users in the US have Solitaire by MobilityWare installed on their device. So according to an M2 Catalyst study, Solitaire and Spider Solitaire are regularly ranked number 3 and number 4 in total gameplay in US. So real quick, show of hands, how many of us have Solitaire installed? So, okay, so all the Treasure Data people raised their hand. That was good. So, so if you do have Solitaire on your iPad or iPhone, you might not even know that it's MobilityWare. So again, hopefully you'll see that nice promo pop up so with our logo. So all this equates to over 811,000 years of playtime. So we have a lot of people that play our games. We have 255 million game downloads and over 50 billion games of solitaire played. So where do I come in? So I come in because of what we were doing in the past. So for those of you who are a little bit younger, you might not recognize Where's the Beef Ladies? So I would say look it up on YouTube. So, and again, this is my poor attempt at humor. So in the beginning, what we had is we had 3 very talented employees that worked for 8 hours a day, copying and pasting data from the ad networks and our other partners into these gigantic Excel spreadsheets. So, and yes, unfortunately, that is cell HJ. This is one of many, many tabs. We all know the pitfalls of Excel. So what I was brought in to do was to help build out a more automated system. So where we are now is that we have over 90 API calls that we're running daily to pull data at an aggregated level down. So we needed a robust ETL process to allow for backdated materials. And we also needed to store this data someplace, so we chose Microsoft SQL Server as to store our aggregated data. So these are just kind of a list of our partners. Might recognize some names on there, including Treasure Data. Okay, but we still wanted more data. So again, when we first got started back in 2008, getting data from our partners, Flurry and App Annie, at an aggregated level was fine. But what we wanted was we really wanted event level data. So the question we posed to ourselves, do we build it or do we buy it? So I'm sure a lot of you in this room have probably posed that same questions to yourselves. So we first, when we looked at building it, we realized that the turnaround time just wasn't going to be quick enough. So we opted to buy. So we went out, and what we did is we had basically 5 criteria. Not going to read the slide to you, just going to kind of give you some quick highlights. We needed ease of use, we needed speed. So we needed to be able to build our own ad hoc queries. So unfortunately, some of the partners that we did have, they just had dashboards. So you dragged and dropped. I'll get that word out. Dragged and dropped, so the data, and that was about all we could do with it. So we also wanted easy tie-in with visualization tools. So we do use Tableau. And Treasure Data actually had that easy visualization connector. And we also wanted to be able to aggregate data inside the tool and bring it down into our BI warehouse. So all of this led to us picking Treasure Data. So at this point, I'm going to ask Michael Ruffin to come up, and he's going to talk about the monetization side.
Hey guys, always happy to see Ed alive. He's getting up there in age. We always make fun of him, but he thinks I use a booster seat when I drive, so it's okay to make fun of him. So I am one of the only 2 monetization analysts at MobilityWare. My background is primarily on the product side in gaming. This was kind of a new gig for me to learn another part of the business. I've been at MobilityWare for about a year and a half now. Still learning a ton. So I just wanted to kind of discuss a little more about our titles that we offer. A majority of our titles are free, and by free, this means that we monetize through ads. And then we also have a whole nother genre of free-to-play titles that in the past couple years, the company has really pivoted into kind of the free-to-play market to try to diversify our offerings in terms of just our monetization model and our offerings in terms of just user base. We also, because we are a technology company, we also like to try and innovate, and so we have some of our games also on wearables, iOS and Android, and then also on Apple TV. So thanks to Ed, I don't have to copy and paste from this huge Excel file anymore. Half the time it wouldn't even open for me, so I'd have to go into the portals anyways. Really, Ed's done a great job in terms of aggregating all of our data. But the key word there is aggregate. What we lacked was kind of the insight of understanding the why we were seeing trends. We were really good at just uncovering the what. So I can actually show you just kind of prior to Treasure Data and having transactional data, the kinds of dashboards that we actually used, and they're very boring. I wish I could show you something super sexy and all that, but it's just line charts, right? But this is how we did a lot of just our optimization on the publisher side in terms of moving people around that we were our partners and just day-to-day optimization. So nothing great, right? So really the goal of Treasure Data was for us to move from this descriptive kind of analytics of just understanding the what's going on and then move into the why, and then ultimately go into that optimization phase and that prescriptive analytics phase. So we decided to actually, we first started using Treasure Data on one of our smaller titles, TriPeaks. So this is really kind of a case study of TriPeaks of kind of how we kind of utilize Treasure Data to to do our optimizations. And treasure data, or TriPeaks is just, it's a variant of Solitaire. We launched it back in March of 2015, and treasure data we started ingesting treasure data in August of 2016. So right off the bat, what we were able to kind of uncover was that 8% of our DAU fail to monetize on a daily basis. So that means they will trigger an ad event, but we're just unable to fill it for some reason. So 8% of our DAU just fail to monetize. Secondly, we saw that 35% of our impressions were going to house ads. So ideally, we'd want that number more in the 10, maybe 5 to 10% range of house impressions to monetize impressions, but for some reason, we're serving a lot of just house ads. And from those two numbers, we kind of estimated that we're leaving about 15% daily revenue on the table because of that. So now that we have treasure data, we were able to actually look at our monetizing segments, right? And there's that 8% that we just could not monetize. I mean, the bright side on this is that we're monetizing about a little over 75% of our active users. So that 8% was actually accounting for about 15% of total games dealt. So this app monetizes when a user starts a game, and ideally a monetized ad will pop up. Otherwise, an internal ad or house ad pops up. So it's a fairly large segment that we're missing out on in terms of revenue. So we started digging a little deeper. And what we kind of saw was that of our user base, really only 3% of our user base had just never monetized. For some odd reason, we were just unable to monetize that user base. And then looking at things a little differently, on the graph on the right, we saw that we really only get 1 to 2 opportunities to monetize that user. So if we don't fill that impression, that user's gone, and we just failed to monetize that user. And a lot of the unmonetized impressions were going to that. So one thing that we looked at was kind of our rest of world inventory. What we kind of saw was there are specific markets that are just harder to fill, and that's because of the soft advertising markets in there. Just the infrastructure for advertising is just not as good as North America or Western Europe. These rest of world users accounted for only 12% of the DAU, but they actually account for 25% of the users that we just can't monetize for some odd reason. So another issue was the fact that we were seeing 35 to 40% of our inventory being house ads. So one of the big issues with this graph was that little dark blue sliver that you can kind of see. That's our backup unit. So ideally, our backup unit would pick up just the remnant inventory, right? Unfortunately, for some reason, that unit just wasn't working for us. And then trying to segment our user base again, similar to what we saw previously, we're able to kind of identify 3 segments of users. The first kind of segment, and a fairly large segment, were users that they really only trigger 1 ad event, and again, for some reason, we can't fill that ad event, whether that be because the rest of the world, whether that be there's just not inventory with that current partners that we're working with. And then the second being that these are users that trigger multiple ad events, and we do monetize these users, but we're only monetizing them maybe 40 to 50% of the time. So there's room for opportunity there to increase that monetization ratio. And then lastly, we have kind of the real hardcore users that they play hundreds of games. TriPeaks is a very short game. It takes about a minute, I think. So there's some users out there that just play an enormous amount of games, and they will see some ads, but at a certain point, ad networks probably deem them as no value. So their ratio in terms of monetization is a lot lower. So just estimating, kind of, if we were to, that 35 to 40% of house ads, if we were actually able to monetize those ads, you can kind of see the growth in terms of revenue. Ideally, we would like to be at the 100% range where we could increase revenue by 30%. But probably more likely in the 50 to 75% we could probably fill in terms of those impressions. And that's still a fairly decent increase in terms of average daily revenue. So we identified kind of some of the issues. Some of the segments of users were just not monetizing. We had a large distribution of house ads. We kind of understand what was driving those house ads now. And then kind of a larger issue for us was the backup unit not really doing its job in filling requests. So we ran just 2 tests. The first being, we wanted to deal with the backup unit, because this backup unit, the partner we had selected, they do millions for us in our solitaire suite, in our solitaire games. And for some reason, we just didn't understand why they couldn't fill the inventory for TriPeaks. And then second, knowing that we had gaps in our fill, decided to add a new partner to the stack. So test 1, just adjusting the floors. So the dotted line is kind of just the floor average, and then how much inventory was being cleared. And you can see by lowering the floor, it really didn't do much at all. So we deemed that kind of a failure right off the bat. We looked at pricing that was available from treasure data. We could actually get the actual pricing per user that this partner was providing us. And so we said, okay, well, let's try to minimize the gap between the actual bid and the pricing. And we raised the floors, and that just pretty much diluted all the inventory, just went away for the most part. So what it turned out to be is that this specific partner, they just don't have a lot of inventory that they can fill for this specific type of ad. In TriPeaks, we're running non-skip video. It's not rewarded video, it's just non-skip video. And there's just not a lot of demand from the DSPs that they work with. So second, we added a new partner, and things looked fantastic. You can see from the 2 graphs, we're not only to reduce the house ad distribution, but we're also able to reduce the unmonetized segments. And to that, we were able to reduce the unmonetized segments from 8% to 4% daily, reduce house ads from 35% to about 10% of the daily distribution, and effectively able to increase overall average revenue by 16%. So my boss tells me every day, what have you done for me lately? So it's behind us, fantastic. But now that we have treasure data, we can just, having transactional data is just a big deal for us. We already have really boring data in terms of just ads, right? We just look at CPMs, impressions, CTRs. But this kind of opens the door for all kinds of new possibilities in terms of analysis, and we can actually segment users. And like one of the big things that we're always asking for is some sort of LTV model for ads, which we don't have currently right now in our big titles, because we don't have that user level data that we can do that segmentation off of. But also, marketing is also asking us about marketing channels, effective marketing channels. So is it better to cross-promo a user into one of our other titles? Is the net effect actually more? Does it just transfer in terms of gameplay, things like that? And then also just our paid channels. Which channels are most effective for our marketing team? And then just we are in the process of actually integrating treasure data into more of our larger titles. I think it's in Spider right now, iOS Spider. So our product teams and my team, we now have a lot more user level data that we can kind of drive decision making off of. And of course, because we're at Tableau, we want to build more Tableau dashboards so to confuse everyone at work, and just roll out in a more effective way, kind of reporting the new level of reporting that we will have with treasure data. So that's it.